this video, we are going to create a simple sticky note web app with both front-end and back-end parts. You could say a full-stack app. We're going to use the famous Django framework for the back-end and React.js framework for the front-end. So this is the web application we're going to have, and you can have CRUD functionality here, basically, or in other words, you can create a note here, you can set a title, you can set a body for the note, and that's it. So you can have the note, and then you can show the note, list of the notes. Also, you can actually even delete the note like this, and if we click on another one, we can update the note, update the title, for instance, and then update the body. And let's hit done, and now we have an updated note here. So this is the basic functionality we're going to have, and this is the fundamental of pretty much every website and every application out there, especially social networks like Instagram or X or YouTube. And basically after this tutorial you can create all those of things, at least the basic stuff for them. Let's take a look at the GitHub, where you can find the project there, and it's ready to use. And basically there is two folders, backend and frontend. Okay, now let's create the project first. Let's create the folders and then we can start coding. And there's one thing I need to mention, is that basically it doesn't matter if you're using Mac or Windows or Linux. Most of the comments are pretty much similar. If there is something that doesn't work for you, search it on Google. There's a chance that you can find the answer really quick. I'm using Mac here. It's pretty much similar to Linux. There could be a little bit differences on Windows, but it's not that much. Okay, let's create the folders we wanted to have. First, let me create a sticky note app to hold the project with makedir. Then we go to the folder we just created. Now inside this we want to create separate folders for backend and frontend projects. Now I'd like to start with frontend project. Basically here, let's go inside a frontend project. So here, to work with React.js, we need to have Node.js first. We need to install it, and then we need to have npm, and after that npx. When you install Node.js, you're gonna have npm by default, and then you need to install npx. If you don't have it, you need to install it with npm. If you want to make sure that if you have it or don't have it already, you can just check the version. With node dash version, you can check the version of the node. Same thing with npm, which is basically Node Package Manager. With that, you can install all the modules and packages you want for Node.js, and also you can check the npx version. It seems that I have the latest versions already out there, so it's good enough to work with it. But if you don't have it, just go to Node.js website, nodejs.org, and try to install the right package for your OS. It's really simple. I'm not gonna go through all the details. If you can't install it, you can just search about it. I assume that you already have all the tools and modules installed there. When you install Node.js and npm comes with it, if you don't have npx installed, you can install it easily with npm. Let's search for it. This is how you can find the answer you're looking for. So it's really easy. Just start with npm and go ahead with that, like this. And this is basically the main website for, getting the modules and packages, and you can see the installation is pretty easy. Once you have npx on your computer, you can create a React project. It's really easy. Just type npx create -react-app and the name of the application you want to have, or you can put dot instead of the name of the project, and it's going to create all the files inside the root of the project. We missed something here. Yeah, there is extra T over here.
Okay, now the project is ready. You can run the project simply with running npm start. That's all you need to do. So here we get a message. It says that the port is already used because I'm running another project on that port. So let's basically remove the project from that port and then reuse it again. So you can kill the port with npx kill port, the number of the port, and you can reuse it again. And now we can npm start again. And you can see that the port number is 3000 and it's localhost basically. Now let's start VS Code for coding as the code editor. We have all the versions for different OS. So go ahead and install the right for you. As soon as you installed the VS Code, you can go to the project directory and type code dot, then the project will be open in VS Code. I'm gonna open the whole project, basically including both backend and frontend parts. And now here we have VS Code. So the good point about VS Code is that you have access to terminal here. I'm gonna go to the frontend directory of the project. And here I want to again npm start. Be careful that you need to kill the port again if you're running a project on that. Now let's take a look at the files and main files of the project. Here we have app.js, which is the main file that will be run when you start a project, when you run the project. And everything starts from here. So one thing I want to do here is that I want to clean up a little bit and I want to remove the extra codes and just write this is my app. The good point about React.js is that the output will be appeared automatically when you do some changes. So now I want to introduce some plugins useful for VS Code, which makes your life easier. The very first one is auto rename tag. This module helps you to use tags really easily. And the second one is ES7 plus React module, which is really helpful and you can create components really fast in React. The last one is prettier code formatter, by which you can actually make your code more clear. Now let's take a look at app.css, which includes all the styles for the project. Now what I'm gonna do is that I want to create the basic structure of the project and then I want to style that. So let's create a div, and the point here is that if you want to assign a class to an element, HTML element, you, instead of using class, you need to use class name. This is how it works in React.js. This is the convention here. So class name would be app-header. Now let's take a look at the structure of the existing app.js in GitHub. So I can make sure that everything is, the same. because I don't want to have differences there. So we want to have app header, app body, and app footer basically. This is how we can define these parts. Okay. So now let's put some random text over there, just to make sure that everything looks good. Okay, here it is. And now what I want to do is fill in the app body basically with the structure I want. I want to put nodes, the list of nodes in the body. So for instance, like this. Let's wrap the whole component, the whole page with another tag container basically. Let's remove the logo, don't need it. And now inside app.css we can define CSS styles for the whole project. So here we can check app.css we have already in GitHub, and basically creating the template and coming up with the right CSS code needs time. So I want to use some of my existing codes over there. Okay, let me grab some basic color definition. Here you can change different colors of the project, and or even you can add more. And here we have some settings for resetting some of the styles. For instance, here we make margin 0, padding 0 for all the elements. And also we can change the font size, color, box sizing, and other styles for all the elements. We also want to get rid of text decoration for links with this piece of code. And now here is the time to work on the main style for our project. So I'm gonna start with container class, which holds the whole project, the whole page. I want to start with background color, and we give it a random color to see how it looks. So this is the container. So I highly suggest when you're working on the style thing, it's better for different elements assign different background colors so you can see where it starts, where it ends. You can check the margins, paddings, sizes, everything with a good background color, and then you can change the background color to be as you want. I'm gonna set width to 100% and also same thing, height. Let me make sure that I'm in the right path. Okay, now we can change the background color to be the color we want. Here we want to use var keyboard to actually use the variables we set in the beginning of the CSS file. And this way, when you can define a main color for the project, and then you can change it whenever you want, and you don't have to change the whole style. You just need to change the color in the beginning. That's all you need to do. So I'm going to use background color light, and this is how it looks. Okay, now let's go work on app class. I'm going to use width 100% and max width I had 100 pixels. Also I want to set height 100% and background color would be also light or school. Let's set some margin. We want to actually align the app in the middle of the screen, so we can use margin for this. Like this, we can set the margin from right and left to auto, so it aligns the app in the middle of the screen. Let's check it if it works or not. Something's wrong here. Not quite sure what's the problem. Maybe changing the margin like this. I don't think so. Yeah, that's not the. There is something else. Let me change the background color to be something else to make sure that. Okay, so we don't see this class. Oh, okay, it's with uppercase letter. So here now we have app class, and we can set back the margin to be the same as the CSS class. So like this. Okay, now this is what we want. Good, good. Let's change the color back to okay, this is the background. Okay, it's good. Now let's start with app header. Add some padding for it. And when I say 20 pixels 0, the first number is basically for top and bottom, and the second number is for left and right. And I'm not going to go through the details of CSS styling because I assume that you already know a little bit about all of these parameters. So I highly suggest, if you don't know these things, please go ahead and watch some videos about this. This video is not about CSS styling, we're just using some default CSS and styles. So if you don't want to struggle with these things right now, just copy and paste the code we have in app.css in the GitHub repository. Let's continue. I'm gonna put font weight in 100, background color. Set display as flex. Also, to align items, for instance, if you want to have a list of items in a row or in a column or in some order, you can use display flex in CSS. We used to use Bootstrap to align items, but these days, because CSS already includes this kind of option, you can use flex to align items, and it's really easy to use it. So now I want to set justify content center. I want to align the header in the middle of the screen, so I say justify content. Let's work on the app footer. Add font weight for that. And background color. For the app, I want to change the color to app light so we can have different colors for footer and header. Add some padding for app footer also. And this is how it looks. I think it's good for now. And now let's start working on the main body, basically app body. So here what I want to do is setting display to flex. I'm going to set flex wrap to wrap. Basically, I'm going to order the items in a way that they, place next to each other. And when there is no space, just go to the next row. So it first fills the first row, and then if there is no space, it goes to the second row and it continues. So we can see that we have all 3 nodes in the same row. So now what I like to do is that actually I want to work on the notes a little bit, so make them to have title, body and footer and all this extra stuff. So let's go to app.js, and here we can modify one of these nodes here. So I'm gonna add another div tag for the header and another div tag for the body. Now what I'd like to do is that I want to introduce components to you. In React.js you can do the whole thing in just app.js, but it's not really a best practice and it's not recommended. Instead, what you need to do is, separate different parts and then combine those basic parts. Let's create a folder called components inside src. The name of the folder is up to you. You can change it to anything you want. And inside components, I'm going to create a JS file called note item list. So if you remember, I told you that you need to install plugin for VS Code. So here I can say RAFCE. So it automatically creates the React component we want. Or you can go ahead and write down all the code, all the script here, line by line. But because we're going to do this a lot, it's easier to use this plugin. So the name of the plugin was ES7 Plus for React. Now, one point about creating React components is that the whole component should be wrapped only with one tag, with only one element. So here I want to put div tags, and then inside it I can come up with all the structure I want for the component. So I say this is a note item in the list, and here we can get rid of all these lines, and then we can use the component we just created. The only thing we need to do is just importing the component from the path we have. So import note item list from components folder. You don't have to specify src because we're already in src folder. So just need to say components and note item list, and then we can use it like this, note item list. It's like a tag, an HTML tag. So I can just grab this, copy it and paste it over and over. So we can easily have a bunch of copies of that. Now let's try to work a little bit on the component. I'm gonna go with class name for this as note list item. Let's check it. Okay. Note item list header. And here, let's say note item header or title, maybe. Now we're gonna have also body for the note list item. So class name would be note list item body. And I want to wrap the whole thing with one element, which would be note list item, something like this. let's get rid of this parent div to see what happens if we do this. So as you can see, we get an error here because it says that we need to have one root element. Let's bring back the div element. And now let's check the output. Here we have, we have all the nodes next to each other in one row with header and body, with title and body actually. So let's work on the title a bit. Let's create another div for that with the class name of node list item title. Right now we're using some static data, but later on we want to use dynamic data using backend APIs and fill all the information with the data coming from the backend, from the database. But for now it's just static data, so all the nodes are similar. In the header part we want to include title and date, something like this. Let's check the output. Okay, this is how it looks. And for the body, let's create more data. Maybe just copy and paste body. Okay, we haven't added the styles for the node list items yet, so let's do it. Go to app.css. The very first thing is node list item header. We want to add some styles to that. Border bottom. One page solid and color background. Add some padding to that. I want to have the display as flex, and the flex direction, with flex direction you can choose if you want to order the items in a row or in column. I want to have it in column because I want to have first title, and in the second row I want to have the date. And then I have a line here, it's border bottom, and then we have the body. So let's add some styles for the item itself. I want to add background color to that to see where it starts, where it ends, and to stack them together in one row. I want to limit the width and also have some height for that. Add some margin as well. Okay, let's check the output. This is how it looks. It's pretty much what we want. Now we have 3 nodes in the first row and then another node in the second row. Let's change the background color to something else. Now it looks better. Let's add some style to the title first. Font weight. And also to the dates class. Set font size like this. Okay, it's good. Now let's add some style to the body part, the body class. I want to have some padding. It didn't work. What's the problem? This item. Okay, there is extra T over here. Now this is what we want. It's good enough. So as I mentioned before, you can see that the text inside the box has a distance with the border of the box. So this is basically padding. Now what I'm gonna do is that I want to create another component to hold the list of items instead of just putting the list of items inside the main app.js. We can come up with a new component, or we can actually create another folder for different types. For instance, here we want to call it page because It's more of a page rather than a component. So instead of putting it in components, we come up with another folder called page. You can name it whatever you want. Now let's create a JS file called noteslistpage.js. Now inside it, I'm going to use again a React component. And already we have notes item list component, so we can use it here. Just need to import it first, and we can copy and paste it over and over. It does basically the same thing as before, but it's in a separate JS file, and it makes it easier to understand the code and the structure of the project. And now we need to import note list page to the main app.js. Okay, and this is how we can use it. We can add note list page, and that's it. There's one error here. I'm not quite sure what this is. Okay, now we have all the items listed on top of each other. We just need to add the class to that. List of notes class, and then we can style that class. Here, list of notes. We want to have some paddings. Display flakes. Flakes wrap as wrap, and justify content start. Okay, now this is what we want. Now let's check if the page is responsive or not. An easy way to do this is just to open the developer dashboard in Chrome or Firefox. To open the dashboard in Mac, you can use Command Option +I, or I think in Windows you can use Control-Shift-I for that. Now it's time to work actually on the routing. So we can do this with React Router DOM. So let's see how we can install it. You can just search about it, install React Router DOM. In just a moment we'll see what it does. But first we need to install it. So you can install with npm easily. Let's create another terminal. We don't want to close the other one. Go to frontend, and in the project you can use npm I react-router-dom. Okay, got this installed. And here what we need to do, just import React Router DOM. And from that module we need some classes. We want browser, router, we want route, and we want routes. Now the very first thing we need to do, we want to wrap the whole element, the whole component with a router component. Like this. And now here I'm gonna use routes. There's a mistake. Yeah, routes. And inside the routes element, we're gonna have the routes, all the routes we want. Should use route for that. So here, for instance, we want to say that if the URL is like this, I mean, there is no path after the domain name or after the port, as the main page, use this element, load this component or page basically for us. Something's wrong here. Yeah, there is a typo here, browser, like this. And another problem. Let's write it down another way. Okay, it doesn't make much difference. I'm not quite sure what happened, but it got fixed. Looks good. Now we can have another path. So basically we want to say when the URL is pointing to node, let me add exact here because we want to be exact like this, and then when the URL is like this, nodes, for instance, we want to redirect it to the node page. We don't have it right now, but let's create it. We want to have a node page, the JS, new component, and now import it. Okay, here now you can see that when we are in node path, we see node page, we don't see the main list page. So this is how we can assign different pages to different routes, to different paths. Now let's work a little bit on the node page component. So let's assign a class name, node page, another div tag for the header, another div tag for the node itself, and inside that we want to have node header, node body, and node footer basically. You can change this structure based on your needs, but this is what you see usually. And now inside the header I'm going to use an input field because later on we want to be able to edit the title. So we're going to use input element here. Let's assign a value to the input field with value property, title of the node, okay. Now I want to add another completely different div for the date part. It's going to be like this, the structure. Later on we're going to have real dates coming from the APIs, but for now just sample data. And also for the body, I'm going to use text area because we want to be able to edit the body right away. So instead of a simple, text, I'm going to use text area. And let's add a value to that. And also class name. And I think it's good that if we get rid of the parents div because we don't need it, that should be enough. And for the footer, I'm gonna add 3 buttons for delete. First one is delete, the second one for save the note, and the last one is for canceling. Like this, you can use buttons. This is how it looks, the end result. Now we need to work a little bit on the style thing. You see that we can edit the title and edit the body. And here we have buttons, so we need to add some text to that. Delete, done, cancel. Okay. This is the basic HTML structure we want to have. Now let's continue with styling them. First, add some style to no page. And add a background to that to see the node page. Let's get rid of the background. Now let's work on the sticky note itself. I'm gonna take a look at my notes. Add some background and other stuff. For the flex direction, I'm gonna use column, and also I want to align items and justify content center. Now let's go to the header part and style that. I want to use border bottom here. Add some padding. Display should be flex. And as the flex direction, I'm going to use column. Let's add some style for the title. Like this. style for date class. And now it's time to work on the body. Add some padding. We don't want to have border or size because it's an input field. Add some width and height to that. See the back. Okay, it looks like this. It's not bad that much. Let's add the styles for active and focus for the input fields, text area and input. And I want to disable, basically remove the border and also remove the outline. Like this. Okay, looks good, I think. Pretty much what I want to have. And what I want to do for the button is that I want to add a general class to all of them called button. I can add the styles for the button so that I don't have to repeat the code over and over for all the buttons. Then I can add some specific styles for each button separately. So start with button here. Set border as 0, cursor, and some padding. Okay, this is how it looks good enough. Now let's add the style, basically the color for each button separately. For the delete button, I want to have the background color. As color important. For the done and for the cancel, also same thing. Basically different colors. Okay, this is the end result. I think it's quite good. The style is good enough. Now I want, when I click on cancel button, it goes back to the list of items page. So here we can use basically a link, and in React.js we have a specific component for that. It's called link. We can import it from React Router DOM. And the only thing we need to do is just add a link to the button. And with true property we can set the path. So if we go to a note, let's say when we click on cancel, it goes back to the main page. Really easy. Now the next thing is having the option when I click on a note, it goes to the note page. So basically what we want to do is basically add a link to the items. Here you can just wrap it with link tag, and then later on we want to, have a dynamic path for each node. But for now, because we don't have different nodes, we can just specify a static node path here inside true probably. Okay, here when I click on a list item, it goes to the node page. Because it's a static data, all the nodes look similar. And when I click on cancel, it goes back to the main page. Okay, amazing. Now it's time to start working on the backend project. So the very first thing we want to make sure is that we have already Python installed or not. And you can check in your terminal with Python -- version or even Python 3 -- version. If you don't have it, you can easily install it from the main website, which is python.org. You can find Python for all the OSs here. And go ahead and use Python 3 for that. So once you installed Python, we need to actually make sure that we have pip installed there. It comes with Python by default, so we can check pip 3 -- version. And now we want to install virtual environment, which is basically responsible to create an environment for our project. You can go ahead and continue without using a virtual environment, but it's recommended that you use virtual environment for your project. Basically, the responsibility of virtual environment is to include all the modules and packages necessary for your project inside it, so you can activate it whenever you need it. Let's start with Python 3 -m pip install virtual environment. Let's install it first. I've already installed virtual env, so I have it. Now we can use virtual environment like this: Python 3 -m virtual env, and the name of the environment you want to have for Python. I'm going to call it my env. And then now we need to activate the environment. We can use source, go to the directory of the environment, bin, and activate. Now here, if you pay attention, we have my env in the left side before the line starts. It means that whatever modules you install for Python, it's gonna be inside this environment. Now we can install Django, pip install Django. Also we need Django RestFramwork. Now we have Django installed, and with that we can create our project. You can check it with Django-admin -- version, and you can start a project with Django-admin, start project, the name of the project you want. and then you need to go to the main folder of the project, and here to quickly test the project you can run python manage the file run server, something similar to npm start to start a project. And here we have our Django project. Let's check the folders and files inside the project. We can see that we have a main app inside the project, my sticky note, with all the necessary files. We have settings here for the whole project. We have some URLs, and the rest are not really important. We have a SQL database here. In practice, in reality, we don't use SQLite. We use something like PostgreSQL, MySQL, or MongoDB. But for now, for the sake of this tutorial, we just want to go ahead with the current local database it has. Now let's open another terminal. First, activate the source code. First, activate the virtual environment. Go to the backend directory. And now let's create another app inside the project. Basically in Django, it's something like, components in React.js. You can have everything inside one app, but it's better to actually have different parts in different apps because it's easier to understand it. It's easier to develop on top of that. But here, because it's a really simple application, we just want to go with one more app for the API. So let's create it with start app and the name of the app we want to have inside the project. And here we have API app. You can call it whatever you want. And then by default, Django creates all the necessary files. After creating an app, the very first thing you need to do is just add it to the settings, to the installed app, so that the project knows that you have this app. Now the very first thing I'd like to do is creating my models. Basically with models in Django, you can say that I want to have these kind of tables with these fields. And the good point about Django is that by default it has ORM. It means that you don't have to deal with database and SQL queries. You just need to create your models, and then it converts the model to the actual tables and data for the database. For instance, we want to have a model, a table for our sticky notes to store them. So we can create a class with the same name, class sticky note, and we want to extend model, basically Django model. And the very first field we want to have is title, so we can use models that char field for that. And it's fine to be null or blank, so I set them true. And we set the max length 100 because it's just the title, we don't want to have more than that. And for the body we can use text field in Django, and also set null and blank as true. And the next field is update date. We want to keep the date when we update the basically note, and here we use datetime field. And what I want to do, I want to set auto now as true. And it means that when you update the note, automatically this field gets updated with the date. Let's set another field for create date, and basically we want this field when we create a note for the first time. Now we need to set auto now add as true, and it means that it only happens for the first time that you create a note. It automatically updates this field only for the first time when you create a note. So this is the whole thing we want, the whole model for a sticky note. The next step is to tell Django to create the schema for the database. So basically Django takes care of everything here. The only thing we need to do is just type Python manage.py and make migrations. There is a problem with it. No module name app. Okay, it seems that we have a typo there. Okay, yeah, it should be API, the name of the module. And now let's try make migrations again. Also, there is another typo there. Text field, make it correct. Okay, now you can see that here in migrations folder, you can see the migration files basically. So if you're using a version control, you need to commit all of these migration files and then push it. In practice, you don't need to create migrations. You don't need to make migrations on production. You just need to do it during development, then you push it to the server and then you can use it. So here's the schema we have for the model we created. Now the next step is ask Django to basically create all the tables we need based on these migration files. So we just need to say Python manage.py migrate. The good point about Python is that it comes with a default admin panel out of the box. So you just need to type admin and then you need some credentials to log into the admin panel. So let's create it with Python manage.py, create super user, set admin for the username, some email address and password. Okay, now we can try to see if it works or not. In here, we use our username and password. So in this admin panel, we can have access to all the models. We just need to define them. We can't see them right now. The only thing we can see here is groups and users. So let's add our model to the admin panel. Just go to admin.py in our app, API app. Here we say, here we need to load our model from models folder, import the sticky note, and then we can say add it to the admin site like this, admin site register. If we refresh, we can see the model we have. Now we can simply create any note we want. We can update, delete, and do all sorts of things. And here we have a new sticky note, but as you can see, the name is not really clear. So let's change it. What we can do in models, we need to use a method called str basically, and we pass self, and we want to return, for instance, the title of the model. If I refresh, you can see the name, the title of the note here. Let's add one more note here. And we can also select all of them and delete them. Now let's create a couple of valid nodes. I'm gonna use ChatGPT to create some sample nodes here. It's really easy. Just type that you need a couple of nodes with title and body. So let me copy and paste all of these things. Next node, again. Now here we have a list of nodes we added. Now what we want to do is that we want to get all the nodes from the backend and then show it here in the front-end part. We can do it through APIs, or basically RESTful APIs. To simply create some APIs, we can use Django REST framework, which is really famous, and you can just go to the website and read the documentation. It's really useful. So the very first thing you need to do is just install the module, and we already installed that with pip install, and then we need to do some configurations. We need to add RestFramwork to installed apps. So the next step is to create the paths and routes we want to have, because with a URL we can access to the backend. This is basically the API endpoint. So to create API endpoints, we can use the main URL.py in the main application, or we can have different URLs.py in our app. Here, let's create a file in an API app called urls.py. And then I just want to copy this, paste it over here. Don't need this part. And here for instance, I want to have nodes path, so it should be like this. And then I want to say that if you're in this path, run this view for me. We just need to import the view. We haven't created views yet. We'll see in just a minute what view is. And we say, for instance, we want to have get nodes view. We're going to create that and just put a name for this path. Get nodes, for instance. Okay, let's create get nodes view. Basically, view here is a controller. And inside the view, we can write on all the functionality and business logic we want to have for the application. And let's import the model for sticky note, because we want to use it. Easily we can get all the lists, all the nodes with sticky note.objects.all. Here this syntax returns all the nodes, sticky notes we have in the database. Let's get rid of render, don't need it. The very first thing we need from RestFramwork is a decorator called API view. With API view decorator, we actually can tell us that which kind of method this API accepts. API view, and let's say get, because we just want to get the data. The next part is creating a serializer to serialize the basically data, the nodes we got from the database. Now we want to convert it in a form to be able to return it as a response. So we use serializers when we use RestFramwork. Create serializer.py file, and from RestFramwork we import model serializer. This is what we need, and also import sticky note model. Let's create a class for serializer we want to use, sticky note serializer. Model serializer. And now here in the meta class we need to give some information. For instance, the model we want to use, sticky note, and which fields we're gonna return. So basically here we want to return all the fields. That's it pretty much, I think. Now here we can use serializer in views.py. We just need to import it like this. We can pass notes as the first argument, and then as the second argument we need to define, is it only one instance or it's a multiple instance. So many true, because we have a list of notes, not only one note. The next thing is returning the response. So we're going to import response from RestFramwork. Can return response like this, or that data. Okay, it's good enough, I think. We have get notes. Now the final part is that actually the entry point for Django is the main urls.py in the main app inside a project. So now we need to define the other URLs that we want to use. So here I say that, for instance, if the path starts with API, use URLs in my API app. You can say it with include. You can include it with. Let's try it. I can say API notes. So first Django sees API part, then it passes to the second URLs. Something's wrong here. Okay, it should be filled. Okay, now we get a list of notes easily with a couple of lines of code. Now we can use this API basically to get data in the front-end side. Now let's use this API in our front-end. First we go to notes list page, to JS. And here, the very first thing we need to do, we need to import a couple of things, useState and useEffect hooks from React. In just a second, we'll see what they are. If we want to actually define some dynamic data, we need to use useState. A regular variable is not good for that purpose if you want to have a dynamic data. For instance, here we want to have a list of nodes. The best way to define this variable is through useState hook. And also using useState gives you a function to be able to change the variable, change the value of that variable. So here I define const nodes and set nodes. Basically the main variable here is nodes. We want to put all the nodes inside nodes, and then we're going to use set nodes to change the data inside nodes. Now the next step is to fetch data, and we're going to do that through defining a function here. For instance, get nodes. So we're going to create an arrow function here. And actually, I want to use async. Let's define response. We use fetch function to call an API to send a request to the backend. And before that, we use await because we used async. And now can get the data with await response to data. Now we can update the notes with set notes and put the data inside notes variable. As soon as we call set notes and we change the data inside notes variable, the component gets recreated. That's the point of using useState. Let's print the notes to see what we get. Okay, here if I refresh, we don't see anything because we haven't called that function yet. So to call function, here we need to use useEffect hook. And with useEffect hook, we can say that like this, we can say that get notes, we can call get notes, and we can say it, call this function for the first time that the component gets mounted. And there is a problem, so this is a problem with cross origin. We need to fix it. So basically the cross origin problem is when you want to access the backend, but the backend doesn't allow you to use its APIs because the backend says that where you are requesting from is not allowed because you are on a different server or on a different port. So here we're using port 3000 for the front end, but the backend is on another port. So by default, Django doesn't allow this. So we need to install a module to actually allow for other clients to be able to access to the backend. So here we install Django course headers, we pip install, and this module is going to handle that problem. But before that, we need a couple of configurations. The first line we need is course allow all origins true. It means basically we allow every client to access to the backend. It's not really good practice for real world applications because we just want to give the access to our client, to our front end. But for the sake of this tutorial, that will be enough. There is still a problem. We missed a couple of configurations. Let's add them. First, we need to add course headers to the installed app as well. Also, in the middleware, we need to add course headers middleware like this. You can find the right configurations in GitHub or the actual document for the module. Okay, it seems that there is something wrong here. We don't get the data from the backend. Let's change the position of console log. Yeah, the correct place to put it is in the useEffect actually. Okay, now the next step is to show the data, is to render the data basically in the note list page component. So we have a list of notes, and for each node we want to use note item list component. So we can use map function to loop through all the nodes inside notes data like this with arrow function, which we need to just grab note item list component and put it here. Now we need to pass two values. The first value is the note itself, because we want to show the data inside the component. And also when we use map in React.js, we need to use key attribute and fill it with index. That's how it works here. And now here we just need to get the note, a note item list. Now we have access to note data, and we can grab title, and we can use title, body, date, whatever we want from note object. So here, instead of title, I can say note.title, note.body, note.update date. And you can see that now we have a dynamic data that comes from backend. Because body is too long, let's slice it. Around 50 characters would be enough to show it in the list of items, maybe 100. Also, there's a problem with update date. We need to make it look like better. So here we can create another function called for instance format date, and we get date here using our function. Let's return new date, and we want to change it to be to local date string. Now we can use this function here like this. If we save, and okay, now it looks better, I think. Okay. Well, the next step is to, when I click on one of these nodes, we want to go inside the node. So let's make it happen. So we need to go back to the backend project, and we need to define another API for getting the data for a single node instead of getting a list of nodes. So here, create a path, change the name to getNode. We want to use getNodeView, and for instance, we want to have an API like this, API nodes and the ID of the node. So in Django, we can say something like this. We want to have a parameter in the URL with string format, and it will get. Now we copy and paste, change it to getNodeView. Now here I want to pass PK. Basically, it's the number comes from the URL, and then we pass it to objects that get ID. We want to have this specific item, and here we have only one item, so let's change it to false. That's it. If I refresh the page, I can see the data for that specific node. I can change it to 2. We don't have 2, I think. There's no match for that. No match for 1. So if we see the list of nodes, here we have a match for ID 4. Okay, this is a list of nodes. Okay, now let's get back to node item list component, and here let's create the actual link here. We want to make it to point to correct link for that specific node, so we want to add the node ID. Like this to the link. Now if I click on a node, the URL will be like this. Now we need to get the ID from the URL in the node page, basically. First, let's define it in app.js like this, node ID. To get the ID from the URL, we need to use a hook, use params here. We can use it like this. Node ID, for instance, and use params. Basically, use params gets the parameters from the URL and return it into node ID. Now let's import useState and useEffect hooks. Let's define a state called node to keep the data for the node, and set node here for changing the data for node with an empty state. Let's create a function for fetching the data from the backend. Sync let response be await fetch. So here we just need to copy the URL API endpoint, basically paste it over here. Now you can see that we have a main part in the beginning of the API, but if you want to use this application in another server or in a real server, you probably will have a domain or another API, so you need to change this. So instead of changing the part over and over in all the places, you can just use proxy in React.js, so later on you can change it easily. Just grab it and put it here in the package.json. Now if you when you change the server, you can just change the IP address or the domain name. Remember that you need to restart the project. First, let me kill a port and restart the project. Now here we need to replace it with node ID and get the data response. And finally we want to update node state. And here, instead of, for the title, we can use node title instead of a static data. Same thing for body. And for the dates here, let's copy the function we already created there for formatting the date. Copy and paste it. It's not a good way, it's not best practice to copy and paste a single function over and over, but for the sake of this tutorial we want to keep it simple. But it's better to create another, utils, for instance, and then put all the functions there. And now here we can use format date like this, format the date, or update and create date. So there's only one thing left to do, and basically we need to call getNote function when the component mounts for the first time. With useEffect we can do that, and as the second argument we just need to pass an empty array. Something's wrong here. Okay, yeah, like this. Okay, it doesn't work. Let's check a couple of things. Undefined, so it doesn't pass the right node ID, the correct node ID to the backend. The route here is fine. Okay, I missed some parentheses over here. Now if I click on a node, you can see the data for that specific node. Now let's change the footer and the header of the page, and it's better to change it with something more meaningful. That's for the header, and of course you can come up with menus, different items, and also for the footer you can come up with different structures. But our goal here is just to work with the main functionality of the website, and you can come up with different links because you already know how to add links there. But that's good for now. The next step is to come up with the API of the delete functionality. So first we need to create the API for that. Let's go to the backend project, and there in the URLs, the py here, let's copy and paste this line so we can edit it and add a delete to the API. Also we need a new delete for that. And now let's go to usePy, and we can copy this and reuse it again. So here for delete we can use delete methods for the request. Actually we did not. Okay, and now when we get the node item we can really easily delete that, and then we just need to send a response, maybe message, the node got deleted, something like that. What I'm doing here in this tutorial is not basically following the best practices, just the basic things that you need to learn and to understand. But on top of this you need to learn the best practices to come up with better solutions and functionalities. Node-page.js, here we can add onClick event to the delete button, and then we can call function there. So when you click on the delete button, it calls delete node function, and inside it we can fetch, basically we can call the API, request the API for deletion, like this. When you're using delete method, you need to specify the method exactly. It's not like get method, because by default when you use fetch, by default it's get, but if you want to use other HTTP methods like delete or post or put, you need to specify it exactly. And also we need to add headers to the request. We set content type to be application JSON. And that's it. Now after this, when I'm done with the deletion, I'd like to come back to the home page, so we can force the application to go to the link to the URL we want. We can do that with use navigate hook. Then we create an instance from that. And we use navigate instance to go to the home page. So when I go to a node, and if I click on delete button, something's right. Let me check. Well, the onClick method is on the wrong button. We need to change it to. And now when I hit delete, it deletes the object, deletes the node, and then goes back to the home page. Now the next thing I'd like to work on is, so I'd like to, I want to be able to update the title or the body. However, right now we are not able to edit the input text at all, because the value is fixed to, to the data that comes from the server. So this is a behavior that we need to implement in the frontend project. So here I want to create a function called handle body change. So basically when I type something in the text area, I wanted to update the node, and then update the body for the node, and then update the text area. So we pass the value for body, and then here we can simply set node, update the node basically with set node, and we can update the body for the node. Because node is an object, and it includes title, body, date. So we want to just update the body. One solution here is to use first spread operator, so we can basically create a copy of node object, and then we can update the body. Okay, good. So I just need to call handle body change when basically the user types something. So we can use onChange event listener here. We can pass the event, and we can call the function handle body change here, and then pass the value to that, basically the value for the text area, the target dot value. So let's test it to see what happens. Okay, everything looks good. So now let's do the same thing for the title as well. So I can copy this line and paste it just here, but we need to change the function name. So I'm gonna change it to title. And let's copy and paste this and change the title. Now instead of body, we need to update the title here. Let's test it. Okay, as we can see, when we type something, the input field gets changed. Now the next step is that when we click on done, we wanted to send the request to the backend and update the whole data in the database, basically. But for now, it's just happening on the front end. So let's create another view for this, another view for updating the nodes. I just need to copy these lines and paste it, and then I'm gonna use put method here because we are updating an object. Let's get rid of extra lines. And here we need to use serializer. We want to pass node as the instance, and we want to pass the data that comes from the front and from the client as the data for the serializer, and serializer does everything and actually updates it. Now we just need to check if the data is valid, and then we can save the serializer. Also, we can return the data. Let's fix the functions method's name here, and then we can come up with a new API here really easily and just change the view's name. Okay, like this. Good enough, I think. Let's test it. So here we need to come up with a new function, update node, and then here we can use fetch to actually send the request to update the node. Just change the method to put. Also for the body, we want to send body because we are updating the node and we need the modified data, so we pass node as body. And now we need to call update node when we click on done. Like this. Okay, let's try it. Let's change the text, also the title. Okay, it seems something's wrong here. Okay, it seems there's a problem with calling the API or the API itself. Yeah, here we need to actually pass the data in JSON format, so we use JSON string file. Let's try one more time. Okay, still doesn't work. Now the problem comes from the backend, apparently. Okay, it seems that the problem is here. It should be data, not date. Okay, let's try again. Update the title. When I hit done, okay, it got updated. It's also updated text. Yeah, as you can see, it got updated, and basically the whole data is coming from the backend, from the database. So we got succeeded to update the data. So now the only part is left to do is the functionality to create a new node. The very first thing I'd like to do, I'm gonna add a new button, a new image basically for adding a node. So let's go to the GitHub repository. And there in the assets folder, you can find SVG file. It's a plus sign. You can use any sign you want, any image you want. It's not important, but if it's easier for you, you can use this. Just grab this and put it in a folder called assets in your src folder. You need to create that folder yourself. And now we can use this SVG file in our frontend. So let's go to nodes list page.js. There I want to add a new button for adding a new node. And actually let me to create a component for that. So in components, I'm going to create a new JS file, node create placeholder. Let's create a component. Just want to copy everything inside node item list. And then I want to get rid of the extra lines. I don't need them. Now let's import a SVG file like this. It's really easy. You just need to import it by giving the right path. Assets plus SVG. Now let's use image tag here and use the imported SVG as the src for the image tag. Now let's use this component in our nodes list page. First we import it. Okay, something's wrong there. We don't need link for now, or actually we can import it. Let's keep it there as it is. We just need to import it. And now let's fix the URL to point to the right page, basically, for creating a note. Something's wrong. It's not defined. Because let's restart the server. I think there's something wrong with the project. Probably because we added a new folder, new assets. Maybe that's the reason why it doesn't work. Let's restart it. Okay, now it looks good, and let's grab some styles from the repository for the placeholder and for the image. You can just copy and paste those lines. Let's add the class. I'm gonna have border dotted. Display would be flags, line item center, just the content center. And also opacity will be 0.2. Okay, but there is something wrong with the image. Let's add some styles to that. No, set width as 40%. Okay, let's move this node create placeholder class to here, and get rid of the parent div. We don't need it. Okay, now it looks better, I think. Much better. Let's create hover effect. Opacity would be this. Okay. Now this is what I want. Now when I click on this, it goes to this path, node create. Let's create the path for that in app.js, and we want to show another page. Basically, I want to come up with a new page for create. So let's import it, not create page. We haven't created yet, so let's create it. Inside page, not create page at least. We can just copy everything inside no page because it's pretty much similar to this page. And since we don't have any dates because we're just creating a node, let's get rid of these lines. Just gonna say new sticky note. Also, we don't have any delete button because it hasn't created yet. Something's wrong here. Okay, we need to import necessary hooks and classes. Let's copy necessary parts. I just copied the update note function because we want to change to create note function. Also update the API to point to the right path. We haven't created the API yet, but we're gonna do that, so let it be like this. Also, we want to change method to be post, and the rest would be the same. Here use create node. Okay. Let's add some placeholder because the input texts are empty to make it look good. but they're missing still. What's going on here? Let's change this. There's something wrong here. Let's get rid of value because we don't have any value when we are creating a node. Okay, the problem is that we are not pointing to the right page. Let's copy and paste it here. Okay, now this is what we want. So when we hit new node button, it comes to this page, and when we hit done, there is no node create API basically, so we need to create that. Let's go to the backend project, and there let's add a new API. A new view for that and a new name. Let's create the view for that. Just copy and paste. We want to use, because we're creating a new data, we want to use post method here. We don't have any ID because it's a new node. We just need to create and pass the data comes from the request. And let's fix it like this. Serializer should be like this. And actually, so I think we need to basically pass the data like this. We need to specify exactly what we want. Title first, request the data, title, and a body, because we don't have any dates, and the dates are going to be created automatically. Now let's try the API. New notes. Something like that. And done. Oops. Something wrong here. Let's check things together. We don't need this that long. Apparently there is something wrong with the backend. Yeah, there is something wrong here in the backend. No attribute create note. Well, yeah. Check the backend, and there, yeah, we need to update it. Use name. Create note. Okay. Let's refresh it. Create a new note. Title, body, and hit done. Okay, as you can see, the new note got created. And now we can update it also. Also we can delete it. And this is basically the crowd functionality we wanted to implement in this project. You can create any node you want. Let's test it one more time. Okay, and also it has the date. Let's update it. Done. It got updated. Okay. Okay, and also it's responsive. That was pretty much what we wanted to try. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please consider subscribing to my channel. Also hit the like button or leave a comment if you want. That will be a great support. I'm gonna continue doing these sort of creating projects. So by subscribing to my channel, hitting the like button, you're supporting me to do this more and more. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you. Bye-bye.